All right, boys. It's 4 a.m. Got my second cup of coffee going, and as you can see by the picture, we're gonna go into the weird place, and I'm just gonna start reading threads. Not like I won't read them all out loud to you, but and I'm gonna make my comments. There's been a lot of like comp threads. I already talked about the tiering thread. There's a lot of, but there's like multiple comp threads going around, and instead of going in and just writing comments, why not just say my comments? Let's see what we got going on so much. So I'm actually gonna read like some of the comments and people their suggestions for comp and just comment on that, right? So on Travis's Max Value podcast, someone, Eric Hoyle, said, should we, in order to be considered for the podium, you must play at least 4 different masters. So this is an interesting concept. I think to start it off, the whole comp debate a lot of people have is, I guess maybe I should back up and start with my view on comp a little. So Travis made another post where he spoke about what he kind of like shoveled all competitive players into one thing where he says, your opinion on comp directly correlates to your tournament competitiveness. Changed my mind, that kind of post. And I get it. I think his point is the more competitive you are, the more you care about comp. And I'm gonna be like, yes, but also no. I am definitely on the less comp side. Um, when I and it's I don't like the idea of changing the rules. That's probably where I kind of draw the line, right? Man, I'm just gonna blend a bunch of AWP comments I've read on different threads together because I can't remember where all I found all these. Damn it. Like Kevin K said comp is unnecessary. Oh shit, where should I go? Jeez, you guys, there's like so many comp threads. All right, let's start from what I think comp. I don't really like changing the rules themselves. I don't like the idea of saying Nico can't summon more than once a turn, or I don't know, making up some rules, right? I don't like that. I like to be able to play by the rules, but I also am willing to. So I think there's I'm gonna say a couple levels of comp. One would be forcing people to play different masters. One would be adding restrictions into how you can choose crews. And I think the third one would be physically changing the rules of the game. So I think while like technically limiting masters and limiting your crew selection changes the rules of the game, it doesn't in a quote unquote sense. It doesn't really change the rules to me, like the play, right? If if I if I change, say Nico can only summon once a turn, right? That is a complete change to the rules. That is when we play this game of Malifaux. If two people are playing with the same crews, we're playing a different game. If you say you can only take Yasunori twice a tournament, right? Somebody can do that on their own, to the sense that it doesn't like if you say you have to play 5 different masters and okay, let's start from the start. Let's start from the other side. Let's say there's a master limit. You say you have to play 4 different masters in a 5-game tournament, right? After that tournament is completed, zero like Malifaux hasn't changed. Yes, the whole idea of you have to pick a crew before the game. I mean, you can still pick a crew, but the idea of you pick your master before the game that hasn't changed. Everything has been a legit game of Malifaux. The game physically played on the table is the same as everybody else who's played. There's no, oh my god, the rules have changed. I don't know what to do. It's more just you have to play more masters. But that's Malifaux. You can do that anyway. Like I could go to a tournament now, play 5 different masters, and I wouldn't be imposing on anybody else's rule set. Like as opposed to if summoning was limited. I keep using that example. That's just what I'm going to. If summoning was limited, and I go and say, "Oh, you can't summon 3 times with Nico because it's how I play the game." Like you know what I mean? There's no interaction there. They won't even know that I'm playing with quote unquote comp. To the same point, if I impose it on my tournament, there's really nothing. We're not really changing the game meta to meta because somebody made a comment about how, and I agree with this. if you're playing in a small meta out Midwest and the East Coast is playing with all these house rules of like Sandeep is -1 cast and all this shit, and then you come over to it's kind of like we're not playing the same game. I don't think that master limitations hurt that um so much. I don't think that destroys the game in that sense because Warhammer had a big comp for ETC and stuff, and they had both, army list restrictions and like you can only roll so many dice for something and all this stuff. And it just I think it felt a little different in Warhammer. The whole comp in Warhammer is just a lot different. I think one reason is you build your list before the tournament, so you can plan everything beforehand and just say, "Here's my list. It follows the comp rules. Let's go play Warhammer." I didn't like that I think the game changing rules, the whole like you can only roll 4 dice for spells, like max. But the problem would be you go to a tournament, like if you go to a non-comp tournament and you want to play comp because you're practicing for ETC or something, you're now not playing in a super level playing field because you're playing against people. Even if you take out the list changes, the fact that they're going to be playing more broken lists, which is a bigger deal in Warhammer, they're still playing a different game in the sense of the number of dice they can roll. Spells is probably the biggest one. That changes the game a lot. I guess in the sense of Malifaux, if you go in Iron Scorpion and seeing it, and so the middle ground was limiting crew selection, right? And that's kind of where it kind of muddies the water of more of what Warhammer was, right? If you just do master limitations, that muddies me, but then I'm trying to think. There's this idea that I could go into a game. So sorry, I'm like live thinking. I'm like just thinking about some of these things. So master limitations only kind of affect choices at the very high level. It doesn't affect the game per se because when I'm playing against as a master and he gets all the same choices and stuff past that. If you start imposing, I think, crew selection limitations, that's maybe where it gets a little muddy. Because let's say I'm practicing for an Iron Scorpius tournament. Let's just say I'm practicing for an Iron Scorpius tournament. I can go into any random pickup game and get value out of it because theoretically I could be paired against any master at any time, right? If I practice against, I can't go against. Let's say Sandeep is banned in this tournament. Let's use this example, right? Then I have zero reason to play against a Sandeep player because he's banned and that's not good practice, right? If there's master limitations as far as like you can have to change masters every game, every practice game is useful for me because in theory, any moment in the tournament, I can play against any master. Yes, in game 5, if he's used 4 masters, it's very limits the pool, but I don't know what he has left. It could always be Sandeep or something. So every game becomes good practice versus a random opponent. If you start imposing crew limitations, it depends on how you do it. If it's you can only take Yasunori twice a tournament versus you can only take, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a unit spammed like completely. I don't know. Like something like you can only take 2 of 3 of. God damn it! I can't think of like. Let's say when Gremlins the models were nerfed. Back in the where you say you can only take 3 roosters. Let's just 2 roosters is max, right? Let's just say 2 roosters per game max, or 4 stuffed piglets max, right? In theory, I could play a random pickup game and play a guy who just wants to use 3 roosters because he's not playing, and then the practice game is technically not useful for me because I will never see that in the event per se. So I think that's where comp blurs the line. If comp is kind of a back end choice where it's you put more limits so there's variety game to game as opposed to ever like straight up limiting what I can take in any given game. Yeah. That's the kind of comp I'd want. I don't want like pick 2 of 3. Like you can take 2 of 3 of these models in this particular game. I like the macro choice of play 4 different masters, and you can only and potentially you can only use X model 4 times or something. And I'm not even that big a fan of that one. I think I would start small and do the master thing, because as I said, it doesn't change anything meta to meta. It just, because I don't want, that's what I don't want. Because if the whole thing is, if only 1 or 2 tournaments is doing this, the people who aren't going to those tournaments aren't going to want to play by those rules. And so the more rules that affect a straight up game of Malifaux, the worse it is for both players. If I want to practice for the tournament, I might not want to play this person because they don't want to play by my fancy rules, and they don't want to have to change their game. But if you just use master limitations, for example, then I can play this guy just fine. There is zero bearing on our one instance of Malifaux, other than I have to learn more masters. But it's still straight up Malifaux from the get-go. Now, going into that event, yes, it's going to limit people. Yes, there is a... Sorry, heard a noise. Kelly should not be awake for like 3 hours. There is a limiting... I'm trying to think. Yes, there in the construct of the tournament, there is comp, and like one meta might say, "Oh, I can only play single master. You know, I'm allowed to play solo master in my event." But that really is not, the cross metas doesn't really, it doesn't really shake things, like it doesn't fuck things up. We're all playing Malifaux. We're just forced to use more masters. It's still Malifaux at the end of the day. As opposed to Warhammer, where if you're playing with uncomped Warhammer and I'm playing ETC Warhammer, you can't mesh them together at all, because the uncomped crews or lists are just so much more powerful than the comp versions. And in this case, it wouldn't happen. Because Malifaux, I believe, is a lot tighter of a game. Like, I mean, people, like, where's Kevin K's post? He says if folks want to play Sandeep and Nicodem, blah blah blah, if the top events, regardless of any comp, a handful of folks will make it to the top of the events regardless of any comp system. Yes, comp only serves to add additional barriers to play and further divide the tiny community. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So I get what he's saying, but the thing about comp is it's not for. It has nothing to do with a tier 3 player trying to win an event, right? That's not what I'm going to say we're going to say the competitive people. So in my last video, I talked about competitive versus non-competitive, and competitive has nothing to do with being good at Malifaux. To me, it's the drive to want to win. Like I said, in Warhammer, we had guys who were quote unquote in the competitive scene. They played the good list, they practiced, they played the comp for the tournaments, and they just went 1-4 every event. That's life. They just weren't that great at the game. But I would consider them competitive players. They weren't good players, competitive players. So I think there's a big distinction of competitive versus good, in my mind. Now, I'll call them top players just because. So I think comp does help people even on the lower end, but it's for the top players, right? It's so one, yes, the best people will always rise to the top. I mean, if you watch Capticon, if you watched CCM, if you've seen Nova, it's typically the really good players, playing for the top couple spots. Now, where they lie in the top 10 is always random. When do you lose? Who do you lose to? Going 4-1 and losing on table 1 is different than losing your first game and going 4-0. The path you take, right? I always found, so random aside, people always ask me, what is your goal in the tournament? When are you happy? My goal is to win every game. If I don't win every game, then it doesn't matter. I didn't win the tournament, pretty much. Or even if I can win the tournament, winning the tournament is what matters to me. Past that, I obviously want to do well, but I always want to say I want to be in contention. So I'd rather. So I'll use CCM for an example. I was playing for second against Larry. If I won, I come in second, and I was playing for almost first the game before. I'd rather do that then so somebody jumped me in the pairing, so I lost to Larry. So I came in 10th. I'm sure somebody jumped me from below. But that's all they could get. They were playing for like 9th place. I was playing for 2nd place. So I want to be in that position. The end result doesn't matter. Whether like I'm 10th or 9th doesn't matter. What matters to me is that I was in the competition the whole time. Like I was playing, as long as I'm playing for like the potential first, I'm more happy, you know. So I'd rather go win, 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 lose, lose than lose, lose, win, win, win. Like even though it's the same record, that's just a. I don't know why that I forgot what I was talking about when I came up with that comment. Oh, the point was the best people are always still in contention. But the problem we have as the top end is because people in Malifaux the tournaments tend to go break the same way. You start playing the same people, right? I played Larry and Keith at the last tournament. Now I was using Neverborn, so it was a little different at least. And because of Iron Scorpius, the masters this time were different. So, but that's what we wanted, right? Because if I was still using Neverborn and they were both using theirs, it wouldn't have been Wong on Shen. It probably would have been, well, he might have played Shen that game because it was Collect the Bounty. It probably would have been like Lilith or Kaladi on Shen. And then it would definitely would have been Marcus on Zip. It would have been like probably Kaladi or Lilith on Sandeep again, right? So it would have been like the same exact game I played in Capticon. And that's just what's going to happen because I'm not going to go against somebody and take a subpar master for no reason. So to Kevin K's point, it's not that Sandeep and Nico. I mean, part of it is that they're really good and probably should be toned down a little. It's more that for the variety of the top players, we kind of need this so that we're forced to get those more different matchups. Now, people are going to say, I think Arcane Reservoir kind of made fun of us for having the Iron Scorpius, not because the idea was dumb, but because we didn't do it on our own. We had to have an award, like we had to have a prize, right? And I'm going to tell them it has zero to do. Like, I don't know what I didn't listen to it because I don't listen to it. I don't know like what context it was set in. I don't know if it was like all we care about is the prize and that's why we did it. It really has zero to do with the Scorpius. Like Craig painted a beautiful Scorpius. It was to get a cool award. And we all obviously wanted it, but we're not like selling our mystery boxes and gift cards to like go to tournaments. Like there's no like the physical prize. It's not like that has the value to us as much as we needed something to unify the scene to go for Iron Scorpius, right? If I just post and I say, "Hey guys, I'm going for Iron Scorpius. Who's with me?" You know, I might get a couple people. But you put it out there and you say, "Hey, this is actually a thing. You can win this award." It kind of unites the people. It gives them. It's like the spark. It's the start of the engine to say, "Hey, look." And then all the people are like, "It's actually a thing. It's not just one dude going, 'Hey, I'm going to play 5 different masters.' It's people saying, 'We're going to come together and try to quote unquote win this award, but make it a thing.'" And yeah, the award was cool, but like I said, most people were never going to win that award, and they still went for it. Um, so I don't like I said, I don't know if it's fair my statement about AR. I didn't listen to it, but if they think that if I only played 5 masters because I wanted that Scorpius, it was and not bragging rights. They were talking about like doing it for bragging rights. Well, bragging rights, you know, it's nice to have bragging rights. It's nice to be able to say, "Oh, I played 5 different masters," but there's a point where it's cooler if everybody tries to do it, and that was probably the goal of really adding the prize to it. Um, so so the point was comp. I think is for the variety's sake of the top players. We're gonna keep playing. We're gonna win either way, right? I'm not probably gonna lose playing Zoraida. Oh, Zoraida's pretty good, but let's just Neverborn maybe is a bad example because they have a lot of good masters. But I'm probably not losing to a mediocre player playing a tier 2 master. But at least it's a different game, right? That's the idea behind it. And the idea becomes when you start playing the good people, you get games like Marcus on Zip is in tier 2, but neither. Well, Marcus really is pretty good too. But you don't get, and people are gonna say they're good masters, so maybe it doesn't do what I want, right? Maybe the counterpoint is maybe comp isn't gonna do what I want, because if you force somebody to play different masters, all they're gonna do, like for me personally, right? And maybe they will. Maybe this is a lie, but it's very unlikely somebody, like, if they have their good master left, that they're gonna be like, oh shit, it's Alex. I'll play fucking. Besides the random Colette cheating, um, Colette dirty tactics. Like besides like that kind of shit, like no one's gonna be like, oh, I'll play fucking Karis versus Alex. Why not? And they know that if they're a good player, I'm not gonna like disrespect them and take, my worst master versus them. So maybe at the top end, you're always gonna get these. So maybe it starts taking. So the counterpoint is it kind of takes luck into consideration. I spoke about this in my other video where John played Jacob, and Jacob had his Jackdaw, and he kind of got shit on because the matchup, but like it just sucks to play like a solid player game one, right? It can suck. I mean, Keith played a good guy turn one, but would Keith have beat Nico? I don't know. I don't know the game. But he took Sheamus, who's solid. Dave Leonok took Sheamus and against Masaki, and if it was not Iron Scorpius, he probably would have went Nico. But then you got to make the decision. Would it have been better to say Keith is a good player, I'm going to go Nico and just say fuck it for the rest of the tournament? I got to survive with my other masters, or do you take the risk of losing game one? There's all these decisions to be made, and there's it can really fuck you up. And maybe the meta changes to a point that we don't like it. Maybe it says, wow, because 10 Thunders and Neverborn are very good at Iron Scorpius, because they just have a lot of solid masters. And maybe Arcs, who did well, I mean, Larry did fine, but, maybe it comes to a point where there's just, if the meta keeps going and you start playing poor people, does it become a problem where it's not fun on the other side because you force somebody to, I don't know if this is ever going to work out properly, right? There's always ways around. There's always excuses, right? If the 3 masters in a 5-game event, well, I'm going to just play shitty. I'm going to play my tier 2 Ironsides versus noob round 1 and round 2, and then I'm going to just drop Sandeep 3 times against all the good players, and we get to exactly where we was, except the bad player was beat by Ironsides instead of Sandeep. Is that something? I don't know. So I get what Kevin's saying. Like, I don't think it's a good excuse, but I do agree that comp will, if it gets too deep, it will divide the community in a bad way. So that's my comment for him. Jimmy's tier list, I've already commented on. Somebody painted something that looks nice. Oh, the guy that says winning with 4. So is it a comp to say, how's the comp saying if you don't play more than 4 masters, you can't win? And this is like one of those interesting arguments, because people will say, I'm a new player. I don't have experience with multiple masters. I can't bring 4 to a tournament. It's unfair to me that I have to play 4 masters. And then they'll say this is unfair because now I have to play 4 masters or I can't win. But in theory, they had 0 chance of winning. But is that really fair to put it on them? Is it fair to say you're not going to be allowed to win? Like, because I kind of, like, I get it. There's a difference between knowing it's impossible for you to win the event because you aren't going to play 4 masters, and knowing you aren't probably going to win the event because you're probably going to lose to a better player, right? That's kind of the shitty feeling. Like going into an event saying I can't win because whatever reason, there's always a chance, right? So you're saying there's a chance. Probably not, but like that, I get the feeling. That sucks. That would suck to me. I don't like that solution. I don't like it as a thing. But at the same, so here's going to be my, I guess, opinion on how to. If you want to really do master restrictions and stuff, just run your fucking tournament with it. If Travis makes a tournament that's Iron Scorpius only and says 6 months in advance or however far, here's a tournament, you have to play 5 different masters. Is there how many people is he going to lose because of it? Honestly, like how many people would have signed up for his tournament that won't do Iron Scorpius? I have zero idea. I bet you it's not that big. I bet you it's very small. But is it for the greater good of the tournament that it happens? Probably, maybe. Seem to have a lot of fun with it. Uh, you know, it. But to that extent, I think Malifaux is balanced enough internally, except for a couple masters that are like that. Not everything has to be master limits. Not every big tournament needs to be the same Iron Scorpius type 3 master limits. Do what you want. If Nova wants to be just open Malifaux, go for it. If Travis wants to run an event where you need 4 different masters, sure. If somebody wants to, I mean, we allow people to run fixed master events, right? We say you have to play the same master, and people don't bitch about that for the most part. Like, when if I want to go and play 5 different masters because I get bored playing the same one all the time, But no one says like, oh, that's hurting the community. They say, it's just a type of event. Just go play it. It's a type of event. Oh, that's what Iron Scorpions could be. It's a type of event. If you don't like that type of event, don't go to it. Simple as that. I'll agree that we're in a delicate balance. Warhammer was in a place where there were so many tournaments, big ones, that if I missed a big one because like it was no comp or something, I didn't feel like awful, right? It was kind of like, all right, I'm not going to fly out for that event. There's not a lot of Malifaux events that are big enough to even draw me to them currently, let alone if they start making these weird restrictions that I don't like. Now, clearly I would like most of these, but looking from the other side of a player, if let's say I really hate Iron Scorpius, I just don't ever want to play it. Well, then if half the tournaments of already small, tournament base go to that, I either have to buck up and do it, or I have to just say, well, I guess I'm not playing half, and then that might hurt the competitive scene. At the same time, it might help it. I don't know how many people. So I keep comparing to Warhammer. I don't know how many people in Malifaux, and I'm guessing it's very small actually, don't go to tournaments because there's no master limitations, right? Like seriously, like uncomped Warhammer was so bad that the tournaments sucked. Like they sucked. They had no comp. They were just not that fun. So like not going to them was like comp made Warhammer better. Like for all levels pretty much. The question becomes for Malifaux, I don't think there's that many people not coming because of how Malifaux is currently, right? It's the people who are coming that are getting. So what I guess I'm saying is, does imposing comp help bring in new players? Like, there's these players where they're like, I just can't do it. I just can't play against all these Sandeeps. Probably not. To be fair, it probably doesn't help at all. It really does seem to only serve the competitive bunch to get more variety and maybe make it a bit more fun at the top level. And fun. I mean, listen, not that I mean, people will have more interesting games at all levels of Malifaux if they're forced to use different masters for sure. I actually don't think it's fair to impose more fun. Travis likes to say it's more fun, and I don't necessarily always agree with that. I have a lot of fun playing the same master and getting really good with them, especially in a tournament. Like it's fun. Like one reason I don't try to change masters a lot. For example, CCM last 2 years ago when I won, I ran all Sommer. Now Sommer's really good, but I didn't change my list either, and I like told people my list. He was just that good. But the point being is like playing the same thing in a tournament, like it's nice because you're always in the groove, right? That's why I liked Warhammer. You're in the groove. You make your ETC list, and every game's going to be with that list, and you just keep practicing it, and you keep getting better with it. changing a master every round, you kind of lose that groove. And this is not complaining about like it has nothing to do with like I'm not prepared to play 5 masters, but sometimes you just get in the mood to play a master and being like, oh, I just had a really cool summoning Pandora game. I can't wait to use her again. And then you're like, well, fuck, I can't use her again. And that that snowballs into practice too, right? If I want to truly practice for you know, an Iron Scorpions event, I need a lot more games. And if I'm having fun with a crew, I can't just stick with it. I have to, even if let's say the crew is tier 2, let's just say I have a Zarya list, and Zarya's real good anyway. But let's say I pick up Zarya and I'm like, man, she's so fun. But I'm playing this Iron Scorpions event, so I got to fucking go back and practice. I got to keep practicing my other masters because even if I wanted just to take Zarya every game and say, I'm not even going to play Lilith. I'm not even going to play Lilith or Kaladi. I'm just going to play Zarya. Because of these comp restrictions, they actually hurt people who want to do stuff like that, maybe unintentionally. So that's where we get this. That's where, like, I think problems creep in, more than just tournament themselves. There is, like, it has a trickle-down effect of good and bad. So I don't, I like I said, I don't necessarily agree that more Masters is more fun. Sometimes it's not more fun. Sometimes I don't want to play all my masters. I love playing. I love the idea of going to a tournament saying I'm going to play Zoraida for 3 rounds. I'm going to really get into her. And that's why I think a mix is good. I think a mix would be best because to be fair, I don't think 3-man events you can do max 2 games and that's pretty fair. Just say max 2 games. 2 games max with a master, that's it. Like if you want to do comp and stuff like that. 5 games when it gets becoming a little more competitive, you can become a little more detailed in how you do it. But it also means that like smaller tournaments can serve as a learning for the big ones, right? If I'm going to if I have 5 events before Iron Scorpius, and they're all like 1-day 3-game ones, I can start playing like I'm going to play just Zoraida 3 games this event. I don't know. I'm trying to be like I'm on the fence, right? If it became a thing, I would probably be okay with it, but I can see as a competitive player and a top player, I am a little bit distant from Travis's opinion of we need this because to be fair, I get it, but like the problem with Warhammer was it was just so like matchup dependent at the top level with uncomped that it took away the skill of the game to me. I think unrestricted Malifaux, even at the top table, is still very, very close and competitive. Now, maybe a Nico's getting out of control. Maybe Sandeep's a little too much, and I don't love him. But the gap is way smaller than Warhammer was. So I still think you're getting quality games and quality events from quote-unquote uncomped Malifaux. So that's why I'm kind of like, meh. If somebody wants to really institute it, sure. I already talked about Jimmy's tier list. Somebody was talking about how it's all skill. Yes, it's skill. Skill is the number one factor in Malifaux, people. This is not some new revelation that you're coming up with. But there still are tiers in Masters, right? If I'm really, really good, like no, it doesn't matter how good I am on Lucius. If I'm playing a super good Sandeep player, I am at a disadvantage, and there's a point where skill can only get you so far. And I think it matters way more at a top level because, like, and I'm going to say maybe Lucius is a bad example because he can do a lot of weird things, but there are just some masters who don't do a lot of shit. They just do not, like, do anything. So, like, that's how I felt playing some of the Gremlins models I did. It wasn't that I felt the models were, like, super bad. It was just, like, the depth of the model and the decisions, I just had very limited decisions to make. And I'm not saying I made perfect decisions within that bubble, but that's why a lot of people have fun with some of the better masters because they can do so much and the game can change and the games are actually better because both people are making more unique choices than some of these games where the shitty masters that are very linear Now looking through the list of masters, maybe it's not as bad. I think like Perdita isn't that exciting. To be fair, even some of the bad masters have a lot at least going on. Like Lucius has a lot going on for his power level. Um, so maybe that's an unfair statement, but it does feel bad when all the stuff you're doing is not that powerful. So, yes, player skill. I could probably beat most people with Lucius, but I'm not going to beat Larry if he's playing Sandeep. Probably, no matter how. Now I might throw him off guard. Now I might catch him out. Like it won't be a bloodbath. Probably, like I'm not going to lose like horribly, but it's definitely like a disadvantage. So, you know, that's just it. But it is. I don't think it's awful. So just my general. Let's say every master is either ranked 10 or 1, right? Let's do a big scale. In Warhammer, it was like 10 to 1 sometimes. There's some crew shit that was awful. I would love Malifaux where everyone's within like I don't need everyone to be a 5. I don't need everyone to be exactly the same power level because it's almost impossible to do. I just want the range to be tight enough that I don't feel crazy because there still is like listen, let's not lie. There is a little fun in taking a quote unquote lesser tier master and doing well with him. Um, you know, you just don't want to feel like you're super hindering yourself to the point that you can never win. So I don't think tiers are necessarily a horrible thing. It's when you get too extreme on one side that it becomes a problem because really the lines are blurred. Like even like, and the nice part about Malifaux is even among the top players, the newness of masters can overcome any sort of maybe gap in power, raw power, right? So if Larry's playing Sandeep all the time and I throw down Titania and he's never played Verser, like even though I'm not playing maybe Lilith, who might be a little stronger, I might have an advantage because of Titania or maybe the scheme pool, and so there's a lot of variables. Like tiers are like going to a perfect world of everyone play. We're all humans, so we say, um, where everyone's like playing a million games of Malifaux and knows everything about everything. Like no one knows that. There's no top player. Like the funny thing is, a lot of the top players, half of them play a lot of games, half of them don't play that many at all. Like Larry doesn't play that much. I don't play that much. Travis plays a lot. And this is not to say anything's good or bad. I'm just saying it's not like everybody who's really good is playing 50 games of Malifaux a week, That leads me into another point somebody was talking about. I forgot where it was, but he was mentioning how sorry. How Malifaux has the buy-in for a noob is kind of huge. So he compared it to Guild Ball. So if none of you play Guild Ball, I've played a little. I might get back into it when I move back to Virginia, when I move up to Virginia, because my friends will play it. But what Guild Ball does is they expand, but they expand outwards. Somebody made a good point about this. Every team has about 12 players, and it has some mercs. But all they do is there's like a ton of guilds. There's like 12 of them or something, some high number of guilds. But what they do is they rarely add new models to your guild. So if I am what do I have? Alchemist, I guess. If I play Alchemist, then it's very rare they're going to add a ton of more models to my thing. They might change all the models every edition or season, but the game kind of is, if I just want to play Alchemist, that's fine. I have to learn a couple models here or there. Maybe a new guild comes out and I have to learn some models, but it's not 40 models and 5 new masters for every faction every single time. Butchers are still butchers. It's not like I have to learn wave 5, 10 Thunderers or something. So whipped instead of depth, which is, every crew now, if you want to start Malifaux, that's the point. If you want to start Guild Ball, you pick a guild and it's like, oh, look, I have 15, 10, 12 models and I'm good to go. Let me learn my 12 models, bust out from there and learn a little more. Malifaux is like, here's a faction with 8 masters and 60 models. Good luck. I get it. It's not easy to start Malifaux. And the problem becomes, and I've mentioned in a video why I didn't like Guild Ball initially, and I didn't love it as much as Malifaux was. The depth didn't seem like, people will say there's a lot of depth in Guild Ball. It didn't feel like the balance of depth versus noob friendly is a very hard balance to get, because you want it to be easy enough that these random people who fill out events will go, or shallow enough, I guess, friendly enough that anyone can join in, but you need enough depth that skill will overtake and start really dividing people in an event, right? I want a game where the best players are winning every event. That sounds fair, right? If you're really good at it, would you like chess if random people could beat the best player in the world? Probably not. Now, I'm not saying luck shouldn't be involved at all. Luck should be a factor that helps with. I think luck should be more of a. Luck should be minimal. Randomness can be there. Randomness can breed decision making and on the spot thinking without being, if you don't roll this die, if you don't get the right roll, you just lose the game. That's not what I want, right? I think luck can breed. Malifaux does a good job where flipping and cheating breeds decision making and branching out points in the game. And despite what people say, it's very unlikely they lose just because of luck. That's what I want in a game. I want a game where randomness breeds decisions that makes the game more interesting, and has enough decisions to where a good player can overcome poor players. But then you need it to be easy enough to play that new players want to play, right? Malifaux is not easy to play. Not easy to start either. I mean, people were going to tell you just got to buy one crew box, but do you really just got to buy one crew box? And it's not even like, oh, to be competitive, you got to get all this. It's like legitly to play Malifaux in a fun way. You can't just buy one crew boxes. These crew boxes aren't built to be that fun on their own, in my opinion. Most of them aren't, at least. And you want other models, and you have cards like Amina, who have like 3 paragraphs worth of text on them, if not more. She has like 5 abilities and like 4 abilities and like 5 different actions. Look at the lowly whiskey golem. He has a pretty good amount of stuff on the front of his card, but he's like, I attack, I go defensive, or I heal type thing. The back of the whiskey golem card takes up half of it. There's minions with like fucking rows of text on their card. It is really like kind of daunting in a way for new players. Like, I'm in it, right? I'm in the shit. I'm here. But getting into it is not easy. And I came in wave 2, maybe just when wave 3 hit, right? Then you have the fact of things aren't released very quickly, or people have stuff before. It's not a comp could restrict people at tournaments, but Malifaux itself is already hard to get into properly. That's just my flat opinion on it. It's not easy. Like, the idea of starting a new faction to be played competitively is it's not fun. Like, I started Neverborn, and the idea of trying to get all of them and everything I need is like, ooh, it's a pain in the ass. And it's not cheap. I mean, crew boxes individually are pretty inexpensive, to be fair. Like, you can play Malifaux cheaply, and it's really not that expensive, to be fair. But I can see where you need more than meets the eye. People will tell you one crew box is a lie. This huge ass lie. But, that's why I said Guild Ball is wide. You only need 12 models. But the point is, I thought Guild Ball didn't feel initially deep enough for me, where I'm like, it doesn't seem like a lot's going on in this game as much as I want it to be. So yeah, that's my opinion on that kind of dynamic. Malifaux does have some challenge to get into, and you kind of need a good scene to get it going. Anything? Larry made a how to win post, which is pretty good. I read it. He actually was writing that when I made my one video. I made a video about how to get better after my tournament. People talking about terrain. One person's suggestion is playing with more terrain, and that's like their solution to comp, I guess. I mean, I don't know. They don't know how much terrain we're playing with. So I don't feel like terrain is the biggest problem in Malifaux, but that also breeds like that can breed problems at tournaments in general. Like even if you just don't have the terrain to do 50% of boards all the time, you know what I mean? Like to be Malifaux, so Warhammer eventually got to the point where we used 2D terrain a lot, and we had preset maps in like ETC, and we used 2D terrain a lot. Like a hill would be flat, you'd have a forest that was flat. Like there's a great visual in Malifaux with all these buildings and streets and you know all this other shit, lampposts. I'm looking at a board someone made. It's really nice. It's a street layout. Great. Doesn't look that fun to play Malifaux on. Like real Malifaux. Not role-playing Malifaux. Like I don't want weird buildings with different levels. I don't want like half the time some of the terrain in Malifaux is just useless. Like it's there and you're like, what the fuck is this thing for? But also for TO, it's hard to pack, right? If every board, if you just had a stack of flat hills and trees and forests and hazardous terrain, and you could just throw them out all on the board, and then you had a couple, I don't know, then you had some small scatter terrain, and you could just fit it all in these smaller boxes. It'd be great. You don't need a wagon, right? You don't need a wagon piece of terrain that has like two spokes picking out, and like, what is this? Where is the base for the terrain? What is it on? You know, easily defined terrain is better for me than, and I'm not saying how much of it. You should have enough terrain to play Malifaux. I'm just saying a lot of times what people call more terrain is really just useless things that are in the way. And then it comes to the whole, you know, how can you run a tournament of 50 people? It's hard to get, you know, that much terrain from other, you know, Travis had to ask 3 or 4 people to get that much terrain, but that's just how it is. That is one thing I like about like X-Wing and Guild Ball is because everything's defined to like the terrain is defined in a sense of like the asteroids in X-Wing are preset, predetermined, and how you put them out every game is like a strategy in and of itself. But you don't need any extra outside. There's no, you know, going to a tournament and showing up and being like, wow, this terrain sucks. Like it's just very open or super dense. Like that's one control in Malifaux that there is no control over, right? We have all these rules, we have all these crew building things, but when you show up to an event, the one real big variable you can't control is what do the boards look like and are they going to make for a fun game of Malifaux? So that's a random aside. Do I have any other comments on it? I talked about comp a lot. I didn't actually go into as much AWP commenting as I thought because they put me on these big tangents. Craig is painting my Kaladi for me, so that's going to be fun. Hopefully that looks, I'm sure it'll look great. Tears, yips. What else we got? CCM video, great. These guys had a game night. What else? Dave Leenock had his comp he posted. One guy said, well, this is awful. Let's look at the comp. The comp is, I think I read it already. So it's meant for a 5-game. Every player submits a stable of a most 6 available masters. Each player has to play 4 different masters from the stable over the course of 5 rounds. I think this is an editable document. Yeah, he's changed it. If your stable includes Nicodem, no master can be played twice. Interesting. Nelly can be played twice in Guild. Cannot be played twice. You can solo Sonya if you wanted. Oh no, you have to play 4 different masters, but you can't play Nelly twice. Okay, cool. Shenlong and Asomni cannot be played twice. Kaladi and Lilith cannot be played twice. You can have 2 of Sommer, Zip, and Wong. Okay, interesting. Sandeep cannot be played twice. Outcast can do anything they want. So you can double Hamlin, I guess. I guess they're saying that, oh, okay, that's cool. I mean, that's not bad. You're basically saying, here's Iron Scorpius. You only have to take 4 masters, but we're going to kind of screw you on the you can't play the good one twice. It's like another layer. And I feel like a lot of the people that just say it sucks, like, don't even come to tournaments, but I don't know. Uh, Oh yeah, some of these comments were when he had a Yas comment. I think Varney made a good point. Um, Varney was actually talking about changing the game, which I think was fair, but I already went down the road of why that was probably an issue. The whole like meta to meta. Somebody made a comment about meta to meta does create issues, whereas like master restrictions don't really cause that issue because every game of Malifaux is still a true potential game of uncomp Malifaux. There's no scenario where I'm playing a game versus my test opponent that couldn't have happened anyway. And that's where that's where any sort of limiting of an individual game played becomes an issue rather than limiting across a tournament. Right? Because if you limit across a tournament, any individual game could happen. It doesn't feel as comped when you play friendlies. Going back to just repeat the point. If I say you can only use 2 Rooster Riders in the tournament package, then the problem becomes I could play a test game with somebody that they break that rule, but I can't say anything because they're not playing in the comp tournament, and then all of a sudden it semi-invalidates the practice in a different way. Now, it doesn't totally invalidate it, but there is a sense to it. Anyway, this was a long video. It's already 5. Great. I don't know what I'm going to do now. But, yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. That's my view on comp.